Welcome, people who are just joining us. We're just waiting to start the webinar this morning. Really pleased to have you here with us. We're requesting that we don't have your cameras on for the duration of the discussion because it helps us to concentrate on each other. So Neil, who's the project manager of Bridges, will probably turn your camera off and make sure your microphone is off for the duration of the webinar. But thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're recording this webinar so that other researchers can watch this in the future. And there'll be a follow-up email later today from Neil with some of the resources that we highlight in the webinar today. So we'll just let people settle in. So don't be alarmed if we whiz you out of the screen so that we can concentrate on each other as we um, as we speak. Otherwise, we have a lot of people that we have to look at and we can't see each other as we want to talk to each other. So we're up to 35 people, which is great to see. Welcome.
Rachel Howard has disappeared.
Oh, Howard, you can come back. We don't want to lose anybody. We want to remember who we're talking to. So just let people in and get settled. We are recording this webinar. And we just request that for the first hour or so that you keep your camera off and your microphone off. This helps us all to see each other as we're talking together. You can put things in the chat box. If you have ended up with a screen where you can see lots and lots of black boxes, and it's a bit overwhelming, go to the top of your screen next to the sign-in button. There's a square of 9 squares, and if you toggle down that list, you can hide non-video participants, which means that you will just see the presenters for the morning. We're at 40 participants now at the moment, which is great, everybody. I think we'll just give it a few more seconds just to see if anybody else joins, and then we'll get going. More people coming in. So this webinar is about PPIE and co-production from the perspectives of people with dementia and carers, and it's for the Bridges Dementia Network Plus. So we hope you're all here because that's what you were expecting to come to. I think we might start because we're 4 minutes in. And other people can join us as they come. Neil will just keep an eye on the videos and the microphones for the first hour. And then when we come to questions and answers nearer to the end of the webinar, if you want to directly ask a question, you're very welcome to put your camera on then and ask it of us, or you can put a question in the chat box and we'll do our best to get to that during the webinar. So I think let's get going. So I'm going to hand over to Jenny, first of all, to welcome us to this webinar.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, so welcome everybody. This webinar is on behalf of the Bridges for Dementia Network Plus. I'm the network lead at the University of Sheffield, and we also have Dr. Neil Lowry, who's network manager, on the call today. If you haven't already, please sign up to the Bridges newsletter. There'll be plenty of opportunities to do that so you can keep up with future events and for some of the funding calls, or you could follow us on our LinkedIn page as well. Just a bit of an introduction to the Bridges Network. We're a network plus dedicated to transforming how we think about technology to support independent living in dementia. And we're trying to move away from designs of things that limit what people can do and move towards technologies that can support a full life living with dementia. Our goal as a network is to build those bridges between researchers, practitioners, people in the community, most importantly, people living with dementia, and people providing care and support for them as well. We're a nationally funded effort. We're funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, the NIHR, and Alzheimer's Society. And we're looking to foster innovation, and we do that through providing small grants. So our Network Plus is that model that builds on the traditional network that you might think of, but also that we do have competitive funds to distribute. So we'll tell you a bit about that later. Early career research or training is a major part of our network. We do want to hear from you how to shape this as we go forward. So do please take a moment to respond to the feedback email that you will receive after you've been here. That'll be sent to all registered attendees. Why this event matters. Involving people living with dementia is not a tick box exercise. Starting your career or newly moving into the area of dementia research and design, you'll hear a lot about patient and public involvement and engagement, co-production, and many other terms. In Bridges, we don't view involvement as simply a requirement for a grant application. We view it as the North Star of high quality research and design. So today is about moving beyond brief or tokenistic involvement and more towards genuine involvement of people living with dementia. It's about learning how to listen before you jump in. So a quick highlight on what early careers researchers can get from the network. We'll also talk about the upcoming funding. We're talking about mentorship and training, and this webinar is the first part of that. And we'll talk about a kind of opportunity towards the end that you can apply for more kind of personalized mentorship and training. And it's also a point to meet others who are interested in the same types of things. I am quite happy to step aside and let our wonderful panel take over the event today. I'm thrilled that they're here to join us and to give us their wisdom of how these things work best in practice. So thank you very much. And I will now turn off my camera and hide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Dory, are you taking over? Come on.
I'm just saying, I'm not very good on the chat. So if there's anything.
That's fine. We'll bring it into discussion. It's really
Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. So welcome again to our webinar. I'm so delighted to be here with all my friends and colleagues who I've worked with for many years. I'm Rachel Litherland from Innovations in Dementia. We're a national community interest company. We work with people with dementia in all of our projects, and sometimes we work with carers as well in those groups. We're all about people with dementia living their lives and being in control of their lives. So we have a very positive narrative around dementia, and we want people to be able to live as well as they can for as long as possible. A lot of the work that we do is to support people with dementia to be involved in research, and you'll hear loads of gems, I think, today. You're going to hear loads of little gems that we really hope will give you the confidence to put that into practice in your own research. We do know it's not easy. We do know that it can feel a little overwhelming or scary. So we don't want to overwhelm or scare you. We want to give you some good ideas. That's what we hope we're going to be able to do today, is to give you some good ideas. We've got some people with dementia and carers with us. We're going to talk, some of those people are from a programme that we ran called Dementia Inquirers, where people with dementia led their own research. And lots of people have got experience of PPIE, patient and public involvement and engagement, co-production, co-research. There's all kinds of words and ways and means of doing this. So we just hope that we can give you a real flavour of that today, but we're also going to touch on some of the complexities and challenges, and hope that by discussing those, that again we give you some confidence to put into practice some really heartfelt involvement at the heart of your research. So we're going to talk together. You'll hear from people, we'll discuss things. We'll then come to some of the questions later on that you've already submitted, and then we'll open it up for broader questions. And near the end, we'll share with you another opportunity where you can have a bit more time if you would like to have a try at this opportunity, a bit more time with a small group of people, dementia and carers, over the summer to really think about your research and to put some ideas into practice. But we'll come to that later. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to everybody else that's running this webinar with me. So I'm just going to go around my screen and invite each of you to say hello and a little bit about yourselves. So Alison, you're at the top. Off you go.
Hi, I'm Alison. I live in Dundonald, which is in Northern Ireland, and I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2017 and have been involved in quite a few projects, and it's always something that's very, very worthwhile.
Thanks so much, Alison. Keith?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Keith Oliver. I live in Canterbury. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2010, since when it's morphed into a mixed dementia. And I have also been involved in lots of projects over the years as a participant and as a co-researcher. And I am an Alzheimer's Society ambassador and a dementia envoy within Kent and Medway, where I live, doing things with the NHS and the third sector. And it's great to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Keith. Mac?
Good morning. I was diagnosed back in 2010. I've been a member of this team for quite some time. I live in Stoke-on-Trent and living a good quality life. Thanks to the likes of people that are on here. They motivated me, helped me, and picked me up from really down that. And I'm honored to be here on this webinar today.
Thank you, Mac. I think that's a really nice reminder about what the benefits for everybody, as well as the researchers. We hope involvement benefits researchers, but also it benefits you. Julia? Julia, you're on mute. My first time of saying that. I don't think it'll be the last.
I'm Julia. I live in Torquay and I'm a carer and I'm an ex-carer and a carer. I knew nothing about dementia until my mother developed what I now know were symptoms. We just thought that she was being eccentric. And one of the reasons why I got involved with dementia research, and I've been doing it for nearly 20 years, is because I was just horrified at the ignorance that I had, everyone else had. I have, right, I'm a mother of 3, grandmother of 7, and I have 5 siblings. I'm the oldest. We're all lived quite successful lives and know lots of things and have learnt things, and I've never learnt and never knew anything about it. I felt we did our best. But after she died, I decided that I really was going to learn something about it and make sure that that ignorance was gone and that her life would have been better. If I'd understood, her life would have been better and everyone's life would have been better. So I have now learned quite a lot about it. I've been in quite a lot of organisations, done lots of different work, some with Keith and Alison. I really enjoy working with people with dementia. That's been one of the marvelous things about it, because I missed my mother and yeah, I just wanted to remain engaged and be a bit of a missionary, if you like, for come on, let's talk about this world, let's change this world. Anyway, I'm very excited that all the young researchers or prospective researchers here are going to start on this journey and really learn things and make things that will make life better.
Thank you so much, Julia, for saying that. Dory. We're not going to call Dory Teresa today because we don't know her by that name. She might explain why we call her Dory.
Yes, so I'm Dory. I don't know this Teresa. I've forgotten who she is. But, yeah, it was because I took my granddaughter at the time to watch the film Finding Dory, the sequel to Finding Nemo. And she said, oh, I'm just like the fish with the short-term memory loss. So I became Nanny Dory, but then after getting involved with deep and innovations with dementia, I ended doing public speaking, which I've never done. before, till I got dementia. I was told they were very proud of me and do something so I didn't forget the day. Deep didn't say that, it was just one person, but I'm not naming her.
Me.
Who? And so I got a tattoo of Dory on my leg, and that's how I've become known as Dory. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2013, age 59. Since been diagnosed with vascular dementia as well. I run 2 groups for people with dementia and their carers in Mould. I do talks at 2 universities to second and third year student nurses and masters that are going into that career. And the feedback from that is they learn so much more talking to a person that's living with it. Yeah, and I live in North Wales, I think.
Thank you.
That's it.
Well, more will come out, I'm sure. Thanks, Dory. And Howard.
Morning, everyone. I'm Howard. I worked in healthcare for 20 years, and I saw it looking after people dying with dementia. I had all the mandatory training on dementia, didn't recognise what was happening to me. Was diagnosed in 2017 with the posterior cortical atrophy variant of Alzheimer's. I got involved with DEEP. I was part of the Dementia Inquirers. I'm currently chair of Meeting Centres England and co-chair of DeepNess. And I'm on the advisory group of the Bridges Network.
Yeah, that's brilliant that you've got that role, Howard, directly with Bridges. So so thank you everybody for introducing. I've not missed anybody, have I? No. Thank you for introducing yourself. So we're going to start just by exploring these ideas around PPIE and co-production. They're words that are often used in research to kind of demonstrate that people with dementia and carers are involved. So I just wanted to ask you each a direct question about what PPIE and co-production means to you. So maybe I'll start with you this time, Howard, and we'll work back the other way.
Well, who better to advise and work with than people with dementia when you're doing dementia research? My late friend Ron Coleman describes co-production as starting with a blank piece of paper, where you get people, if you're doing dementia research, you get people living with dementia around the table and ask them, what do you need researching? And how can we do that research to involve you and other people living with dementia? Too often we're brought in later on just to validate as a tick box. And I won't do that. You know, I'm involved in two research projects where I'm co-researcher, and I've been there from day one. One of the projects, we just started the second year, and DeepNess will be leading that research, not the academics.
Brilliant.
So we're turning the head, like we did with Dementia Inquirers, we're turning research on its head. So people with dementia will lead the research, will make all the decisions, will hold the budget and do everything. So it's completely changing the research, not network,
framework or
landscape.
Thank you, Howard. Dory, what does PPIE and co-production mean to you?
To me, it makes me sort of visible again, to be asked my opinion and my input. I'm not an academic person, but I am an expert with dementia. And when I got diagnosed, I became invisible. And there shouldn't be anything that's spoken about dementia or worked on dementia without people living with dementia present, because we can tell what we want, what would help us, and have our input and not just be a tick box. And it's just made me feel visible again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dory.
Yeah.
Thank you. Julia, what does PPIE and co-production mean to you? Julia, you're on mute again. I can't just direct this to you each time.
I agree with Dory, because I also feel that this new career purpose, it gives me joy and purpose. Because as a woman, as an ex-teacher, getting older and older and older and older, you do begin to feel invisible. And your skills, you have skills, but you don't really need, they're not really useful to anybody else. So I actually have found, I thought, if I didn't have this, it's important to me, because if I didn't have this, I might be just an old lady having a nice time with my friends and family, coping with my caring. My husband has early dementia, but with no identity, mission, or purpose. And the purpose in the wider world, to have an effect on the wider world of the people I knew, is very important to me. And it also, I'm being very personal about this, it makes me feel valued, that I can be useful to research and get something done. I have a few skills which have been useful. I was an English teacher, so I'm quite good at helping people with drafts and putting where the commas in the right place. I'm not shy at asking questions or answering questions. And like Dory, I really enjoy this, speaking to people and telling our stories. The building relationships with people is a skill I have, and all of us, actually, every single one, everybody on this frame that I can see is like that. And so very good at telling the stories, spreading the message, and building relationships with people. I just want to say now that with the groups that I've been involved with with Rachel, which were the Ideal Project, where we were the Always group, and now the Friend project and the Policy Research Unit, which I'm on the leadership team of. We're friends forever, and we trust each other, and that in itself is very personally valuable. You're an expert by experience, talking with others with experts by experience, and nobody without the experience actually can understand what it's like or what it might be like. That's really important. I've had lots of opportunities about the co-production. I've interviewed face-to-face online, co-written articles in academic journals, co-presenting with Keith at the Ideal thing. That was years ago, Keith. We were standing in that big hall in Holborn talking to people about the success of the project that we've been on. I also went to, what was interesting as a co-production was speaking at the BGS, the British what's it called?
Is it the British Society of Gerontology? Is that?
No, it's the old one. It's the old people. Geriatrics, a horrible word. A horrible word. That's why I don't like remembering it. And we were the only, myself and another person with experience were the only people talking in this research, talking about research, who weren't actual researchers. There's lots of outputs. I'm sure some will talk about this later, that we've done. We've co-produced a play, a film, a website, a toolkit, and at the moment I'm working on a fairly small scale with a PhD researcher who's making a dementia map, and that's interesting conversations about content, wording, graphics, colours, what sort of things work with frail people, old people, and also anyone with any degenerative condition. So it's joy and purpose. That's what's important to me.
Thank you so much, Julia. You've all moved around my screen. Mac, what does it mean to you?
Thank you. I think co-production in reality is it's designing, it's delivering, and equally sharing responsibilities. I'd like to add a quote here from my favorite TV detective, Columbo. And on one of his episodes, he said, all I do is look and listen and look. And I believe that if this little line is adhered to by the researchers, the professionals, the academics, look and listen and look to the people who are living every day with this condition. And we all know that it's a progressive condition. It changes. It changes from minute to minute, day to day. Weather has effect on most people anyway, the normal people. But the effect is magnified if you've got a condition. And I think if all that is part of ground rule, if you like, we will have better income. And outcome will be of the nature that we're all working for. And I think we will achieve the goal that we're looking for and aiming for.
Thank you so much, Meg. I reckon a lot of people on this call will be so young they have no idea who Columbo is.
He's still my favorite, and he always will be.
Look and listen and listen and look, and I guess that's what we want people to do today, isn't it? Is to hear what we're saying and hope that some of it resonates. Alison, what does PPIE and co-production mean to you?
Yeah, basically what everybody else has said, after my diagnosis, I sort of felt I had nothing to offer again, that nobody would want to ask my opinion about anything, that I would have nothing to contribute. So being involved with real people who genuinely want to listen, you feel you do have some worth again. As Dory had said, you become visible again, because before that you sort of feel you're in a corner and everybody talks to everybody around you. They talk to the carer who's with you rather than talk to yourself. So being able to be involved in genuine research, you get a worth. And the thing that annoyed me right from the beginning was the presumption that people knew what we needed and wanted without asking us.
Yeah.
So to be able to be involved in something and to be able to put forward what matters and what is going to work, and to have a range, not just to have one person with dementia involved or one carer involved, but to have a range of people, because everybody comes from a slightly different, and it makes a much richer outcome, I think, if you've got a nice balance of people within it.
Yeah.
And it's something that I genuinely enjoy, and something that has given me back things that I thought I had lost forever.
Thank you, Alison. And finally, Keith, what does PPIE and co-production mean to you?
Thank you, Rachel. And I totally endorse and relate to everything my friends have said this morning. There's a lot of wisdom being shared by people on this panel today, and I hope that it's going to be useful to those listening. The context for what I'm going to add now is that I belong to a group in Canterbury of 9 or 10 people with dementia, called the Forget-Me-Nots. And we often involve ourselves in research projects at varying levels, from being co-researchers right through to simply filling in a questionnaire. And all of that has value. And when we set the group up in 2012, it became a deep group, one of the early deep groups. We were spoken to by someone from the NHS who said that groups like this had happened before. And they're usually short-lived. They're usually quite useful. We do provide them with cakes and biscuits, as if to say, there's your reward, there's your pat on the back. And my response to that was, that's very nice to hear. And we all enjoy biscuits and cakes. But really, what we really want? This was back in 2012. What we really want is we want to share the keys to the bakery. And the look on this chap's face was a picture. He never, ever saw that coming, because he thought that he could be a paternalistic approach to this group and that we would jump to his tune and we would sing his song for him. So really we wanted to compose the piece together rather than sing his piece of music. So my background is being a teacher, a primary school teacher and a primary school head. And in that role, I taught poetry, but I never ever wrote it. I never wrote poetry until I was diagnosed. And it was one way of me coming to terms with the challenges, but also the pleasures at times that dementia presented to me. So a project that I and Julia are involved in with Exeter University, a different project to this one, involved looking at how people with dementia and family carers could better influence and better co-produce within research projects. And I sat down with a piece of paper and a pen, and this is what I wrote. And it's called What Being Involved in Research Means to Me. A chance to steer rather than be driven. An opportunity to learn as well as to teach. An invitation to feel valued rather than feel worthless. An incentive to help others following in our footsteps. A sense of hope and fulfillment, replacing despair. A feeling of comradeship against doubts and isolation. An alliance of strength opposed to fragile dependency. A pound wisely spent with an eye to PPI is likely to save two tomorrow. An opening to reflect and consider detail beyond eye-catching headlines. An enablement to think and discuss rather than dwell in apathy. A right to make a statement instead of remaining passive. A quest to find answers, to overcome looming brick walls. A desire to make the present and future better than the past. I hope as you were listening to that, there's many echoes in what my friends have previously said on the panel today, and I'm sure there's lots more that we can provide by way of nuggets of wisdom over the next hour. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Keith. Getting some applause there. Just struck by what you were saying about the kind of investment of money in PPIE, which is perhaps what some of these researchers are having to think about, you know, that you save money in the future by doing the research that's going to be of biggest impact. Anyway, that's something that we can return to. So we're going to use our usual meeting etiquette now and demonstrate how that works by opening it up between us for discussion. And we have a few questions that we're going to use to try to meet the objectives of what this webinar is setting out to do. One of the things that we want to do is to get as many ideas across of good practice, good ideas, little things that people could build into their own ideas around good PPI in co-production, and you've already set out what that looks like to you. So I wondered, have you got any examples of things that you've been involved in that you might want to celebrate? A really good example of PPI in co-production and a bit of a reflection of why it worked, what made it work well for you. Would anybody like to kick off? Dory, thank you.
I was really proud to be involved in the Dementia Inquirers, where we all received an award, and there's been some other things. I mean, I was a landscape gardener, as I said before, I'm not academic. And yes, as our good friend Wendy Mitchell used to say, it's a bummer of a disease to get, but it's not the end, because I've now, with Bangor University, I've been involved in a book, and I've been put as a an author on the front cover, other books, Dementia Inquirer, where I was a researcher. I've been on the TV, and I think, gosh.
So what made it work for you? In Dementia Inquirers, we'll put a link to that at the end of this webinar. This was where people with dementia were supported to run their own research projects, and you were part of the kind of the shaping group, the people with dementia group that shaped that. You were called the pioneers. Why did it, what made it work compared to other things?
It makes it work because people were listening, and you were making or helping to make the decisions of what will work for people with dementia, not people telling this is what they're going to do, but then when it's produced or put out there, it doesn't work.
So you were in control. I think that's perhaps what you're saying. You felt like you were in control.
Yes, and when you get feedback, and I don't want paying for things, but to get a small payment or a voucher just to show they appreciate your time.
Yeah. That's an important point. Thank you, Dory. I think we've got Alison first and then Keith. So go for it, Alison.
Yeah, no, really, again, echoing what Dory has said, it's when you have, regular sort of updates and feedback and you're kept sort of in the loop. Sometimes you're asked to go along and do something and you're left floundering. You don't know when the next meeting's going to be, what happened in the last meeting, or they'll message you the night before saying there's a meeting tomorrow when they had it booked in maybe a month beforehand instead of giving you the relevant notice. Everybody understands things can come up quickly, and sometimes that is okay. That's fine, but when it's happening all the time, it's not acceptable. You want, and most of the things I'm involved in with the like of yourself, Rachel, you know the dates well sort of in advance, and that helps me sort of plan and helps me. And you do know things can change and things can alter, and that's fine. But you're given good feedback. I'm involved in an organisation in Northern Ireland, Dementia NI, and that's something, anything we're involved in, that they insist that we have to have feedback. That they can't use us just as a tick box exercise. If they come along, they have to come back to us and let us know what happened, what was the outcome, whether that be good or bad. It could be sometimes things don't work, and that's fine. And like Dory, I'm more than happy to be involved in things without payment, but as I say, I think a small payment, a small acknowledgement is nice to know that they have valued your time as much as they've valued anybody else's. And as I say, if you have a good facilitator within, to keep control sort of the meeting, that definitely helps a lot, because otherwise I think things can get very sort of out of control. Where if you have somebody that sort of keeps an eye on things and everybody gets a chance to speak and encouraged to speak, it works well.
Thank you, Alison. Some great ideas there. Keith and then Howard.
When asked to be part of a project, research project, and I don't go looking for projects, they usually come to me. And I ask myself 5 questions, and I've shared these 5 questions with a number of other people with dementia and family carers. And if the answers to these questions are yes, I do it. If the answers to any of them, particularly fundamental questions within those 5, are no, then I don't. And I think the word no is just as positive a word at times as the word yes. I think researchers need to understand that as well. First thing is the date. So the person will offer me a date to meet. And if I can do that date, that's an easy box to tick. The second thing is the place. Before COVID, of course, many research projects groups met face to face. Since COVID, this word Zoom or Teams has become very much part of our vocabulary. And whilst I appreciate Zoom and Teams and do use them, indeed today is an example, I do really enjoy and crave the face to face as well. So to be able to have both is really important, I think. So when constructing a project, if there is the capacity to do that, then I think that's a plus as well, and another reason to say yes. The third question I ask myself is, who has asked me? And if I trust that person and know that person, again, like Rachel, I'll always say yes to Rachel.
Sometimes you say no, Keith. Sometimes you say no.
The back sometimes helps, you know. But no, seriously, the person who asks me is really, really important, because I need to have that trust and that confidence in that person that this piece of work is going to be sincere, meaningful, and worthwhile. Next, I would say what support can be provided, because the person asking me might not be the person who actually does all the supporting. And I'm lucky to have a network of undergraduate psychology students based down here at University of Kent, and some of them at other universities, who sometimes come into my life and help me with research projects, and then it builds their CV as well. Yeah. So support is important. Next question I ask is, what will be the impact on me and on my wife if I say yes? And what will be the impact on me and my wife if I say no? Will I regret it? Will I be overstretched by doing it? Will it frustrate me? Will it please me? All those things we've spoken about earlier, this word impact really matters to me. And it's a really crucial word when we're thinking about research. And lastly, still using that word impact, what will be the impact on the project if I say yes or no? Will I make a difference? Will my engagement in that project, in my involvement in that project, make a difference to the piece of work that we're seeking to research? If it doesn't, if I sense it's tokenism, I walk away. So I always ask myself those questions without exception. I place those questions in front of me, and then I go through them before I say yes or before I say no.
Thank you. Great list, Keith. Thank you. Howard.
Yeah, so dementia inquiries is a great example. When I was diagnosed, I was given 2 leaflets told to make my will and power of attorney. You cannot drive, you cannot operate machinery, and go home and put your affairs in order. Now, I wasn't driving at the time, so it didn't matter. But I know now that when you get diagnosed with dementia, it doesn't automatically mean you cannot drive. There are obviously people that are too advanced with dementia that wouldn't be able to drive, but people that are diagnosed at an earlier stage may still be able to drive. So what should happen is they're told this license is suspended until they get retested. And one of the projects we funded was around that question, was about the decisions about giving up driving, because people don't realise, like a lot of things, when we get diagnosed, we don't realise what our rights are. You know, we're not told what our rights are. We're just given we're just told what we can't do, and we're chucked over the cliff edge and left to get on with it. In most cases, and we also on Dementia Inquiries, we had our own ethics committee, and the ethics committee was only people with dementia. Wendy Mitchell, I'm part of a series of research projects about the Good Life course, and Wendy Mitchell went to an ethics committee a few years ago to discuss the research, and the ethics committee didn't talk to Wendy about the research. They wanted to talk to Wendy about Wendy. They didn't want to talk about the research. They were trying to find reasons why Wendy couldn't take part, basically. You know, we're trying to find ways to say, well, you can't be involved in this research. There was no discussion about the research whatsoever. So there's these assumptions of incapability, which I met when I worked in healthcare. You know, people were kept in bed because it's safer, and they still are. And consultants say it's not appropriate to refer because they won't understand. You know, we get a diagnosis that student suddenly we've got no skills, we've got no abilities, and that's wrong. You know, and also research tends to stop when we lose mental capacity. We should choose before then whether we continue, because there are some types of research that we could continue. For example, if it's having a blood test or a scan, why can't we continue? Just because we become non-verbal doesn't mean that we don't understand what's being said to us or being done to us. I use picture boards with patients with dementia that were non-verbal, and not all of them, but some of them could use the picture board. So there's this assumption that we get to a certain point and we're becoming human, infantilized. And being involved in research can delay the progress because it gives us something to get up for in the morning and do things. So it's really important for our mental well-being as well.
So later on, there'll be a reference to the Dementia Inquirers programme. There's loads of resources in there created by people with dementia about how to involve people with dementia in research, and one of those is around ethics and some thinking around ethics from the perspective of people with dementia. And a lot of researchers have used those resources when they go to their own ethics committees. So that link will be there later. Thank you, Howard. Julia.
Well, I'm going to build on what Howard said, and everybody's saying really is the underlying thing is everybody's different, and researchers who are working with people with dementia need to be able to trust them and need to be able to challenge them in the right sort of way. It's interesting what Howard said about risk, because that was something that came out of the toolkit that we were developing in the Ideal project in the Always group, and research. It was all based on research that had been done, long-term research that had been done with questionnaires and interviews and things like that. And as a result of that, we did a book, we did a play, we did a website. And at the point, and I can't remember, I think it was the toolkit, there was this business about caring for people, and the people with dementia in the group, I think it was about half and half, or I'm not quite sure, said, we don't want to be namby-pambied. Why should we not be allowed to, I don't know, go on a swing or do something dangerous? We're people. And that really had quite an impact on the researchers and the facilitators. And so so we changed it. It was changed to allow for that aspect of risk. And just one other thing that I was going to give an example of is that that research, one of the outputs was a book, a series of books. Keith, you were the editor of that series, I think, and part of the group. And one of the members, who isn't in the group anymore, was an artist. And so at the point of planning not just the content of the book, but planning the cover of the book, which had to be in a particular format because there were a series of them. So there was a sort of little bit at the bottom, and there was a almost half, but at an angle of the bottom of the front cover, was a picture or an illustration of some kind. And we had loads of meetings with some disagreements, actually, if I remember rightly, about what would be shown on that. And finally, the member who's not here anymore, I think she's progressed too far to be involved, but she wanted to. She was asked to, because she was an artist. She was asked to. She'd like to do something with the cover, and she said yes. And the people had agreed that leaves was a good theme, because sort of falling leaves, growing leaves, new spring, all sorts of stuff that we wanted to say that had come out of our life. And then she lost a bit of confidence. And so in the end, she and I were a team, and it was COVID, and I lived in Torquay and she lived in Stockport. But she wanted me to draw the leaves. So we discussed what we wanted. I drew the leaves, my goodness, tried to expand them, sent them to her, and she did all these lovely colours. And that was an example of co-production, but also an example of giving a challenge and supporting that person through the challenge. And it's fantastic because that book is in all our bookcases. She can look at it and know she did it.
That's a really nice example. Thank you, Julie. I think that's a lot, isn't it? To not just, to work with where people are at and be creative about the ways that people can carry on being involved. Dory. Dory.
Talking locally in my area now, in the county, they're discussing becoming dementia inclusive, sort of Flintshire dementia inclusive, discovering dementia. And I asked them how many people they had who were living with dementia involved, and they said none, only professionals. And yet I'm involved with them in different ways, and they know I have dementia. And their answer was, well, we don't think people with dementia would be able to be involved or want to be involved. And my answer was, well, ask us. And they also say patients with dementia. Well, you're not a patient unless you're in a hospital setting. That's okay if you're in a hospital setting, but we're not dementia patients while we're out. Anyway, they've now invited me to be on
Thanks, that's great.
the board.
But that's a really important message, isn't it? Ask us. You can say no. People have the list that Keith has, and you can work through that. I'm going to just do Dory and then Howard, and then I'll just bring this little section to an end. Oh, sorry, not Dory, Alison.
Yeah, no, it's just to come in with what Dory said. That's another example of presumptions. They made the presumption nobody would want to be involved, and they didn't even bother asking. And if Dory hadn't have challenged that, there still would be nobody involved in it.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
Yeah. So yeah, this idea of what you presume you know about dementia may restrict how you involve people. Perfect. So Howard, and actually Mac, your hand, I'm going to see if you've got anything to say. Howard.
So it goes back to Ron Coleman's blank piece of paper. So if you're going to do research on dementia, get people with dementia around the table.
Yeah.
Ask them what they need researching, and then ask them, how can I help you to take part in this research? Don't assume, ask. We're quite happy to tell you, don't send me things in an email, send it in the post, or send me a video of you reading the document.
Yeah.
There's many different ways that you can help us to be involved in research. Don't assume because we've got that diagnosis that we can't be involved.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Howard. And Mac?
Yeah, thank you. Listening to the list that Keith had presented earlier, I ditto. But I have got listed 3 things that get me going and want me to participate. And top of the list is peer sport. Number 2 is peer sport. And number 3 is also peer sport.
Yeah.
Because if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have been sitting here today. And with the research, I first look at it whether there is a need for doing it. And if there is a need, is it doable? And the method used to actually do that research, and the platform that's going to be used to do the research, and then how, when to do it, and will we get the goal? And on that goal, what benefit am I going to get? What benefit my contribution is going to make for the researchers? And what is the benefit at the end of the day for everybody else? These are the things that I look for, and I believe, and I'm gonna share another quote, and that is that the future depends on what we do today. And that quote is from Mahatma Gandhi. So if we don't do anything today, we won't achieve anything. So that's the reason why we need all these, and we need the researchers, and we need the likes of people who are living with the condition every day to be part of that research. And in fact, the backbone of that research to get to the goal that we want.
Perfect. Thank you, Max. So I think, are there any quick fire bullet points? Anybody would just wants to? I think we've had a few great ideas. We've had a lot of conceptual ideas, a lot of really practical ideas. I think going back to what Howard says, that's a really strong message. Actually, ask us what works for us, because it is going to be individual. You've had, there's some kind of bigger questions that you might want to consider before you start your research, maybe following Mac and Keith's ideas of how they decide which research to get involved in, but then some practical stuff may be different for each person. I think Alison said stuff about feedback. That was really important, knowing what happens because of being involved, being valued in some way, perhaps a token of involvement or a voucher. But I just wondered if anybody's got any quick fire, like practical things that you just want to chuck in over the next 1 minute. Howard. And you're on mute, Howard. Hooray, it's not just Julia.
Often research is cis-white heteronormative. It excludes other communities.
So being diverse.
You need to be diverse and put in funding for interpreters and other things that you need to involve other communities.
Perfect, thanks. Marvellous. Keith?
One, try and avoid jargon and acronyms unless you explain what they mean.
Yeah.
And secondly, communicate with people with dementia using the method of communication that works best for them. So some people are really uncomfortable with using the telephone.
Yeah.
Some people find email difficult. Others find both those easy. Some people like WhatsApp. So try and establish fairly early on in the relationship what works best for them, and then try and manage it between the two of you.
Perfect, Keith. Mac?
I think top of the list is, in my opinion, you can't do anything for us without us.
Yeah.
And involve us as much as you can. And, we haven't lost it all there. We've still got it there. And like Keith said earlier, you've got vast experience here and a lot of wisdom. Use us.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, everybody. So I'm just going to carry on because I wanted to just bring it into bridges. So lots of people, we've got 45 people with us, which is fantastic. They're probably here because they're thinking about applying to Bridges for some small funding. And to remind you, Bridges is around technology and technology that can help people with dementia to live full and independent lives. They've got some different themes for their work. And I just wondered, bearing in mind, we're talking research in general. Have you got any thoughts about how researchers who might be wanting to do research around technology, whether that be for indoor, outdoor spaces or online communication or developing a new product, have you got any pearls of wisdom about how they could best involve you in that? Is it the same? Is it just the same?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it's the same, yeah.
Julia?
I think it's just the same, but anything technical isn't easy. Anything strange and new to a person with dementia can be just something that they don't want to use, might even hide because it's new. So you have to think very carefully about how you're going to introduce any form of technology. And you need to talk to loads of people with dementia about that because everybody's different in terms of motor skills. But largely, in my experience, it's not understanding things and being suspicious of anything new.
Thank you. You did all worry me then because nobody had anything to say. Look at you all the hands are up. I don't know what order.
I thought you were asking the group.
Oh, the group.
The
the audience.
Yeah.
I know, I'm asking you. Tori, you go for it.
Technology. I'm quite good at technology. It's like all the banks are closing now in my area. And I'm okay with online banking. I've got it on my phone. But if there's a problem, you get put onto this Cora. There should be some number you could phone to speak to a person, because you have to have the questions she asks about what your problem is may not cover.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I spent 2 hours. In the end, I gave up, and I still haven't had it resolved.
So that's a really good example of why people with dementia could be designing questions at of how to improve technology, but also what might work for you. Great. Keith.
Yeah, mine is a very recent lived experience, because both our TV and our washing machine recently packed up and had to be replaced. And in the case of the washing machine, we pretty much went for very similar to what we had before. So there was a familiarity to that. But the TV is quite different. And we really are encountering a lot of problems with that. The guy who set it up hadn't got a clue about talking to someone with dementia, and was with us over an hour. And my brain was cooked at the end of it. And really, I didn't know any more than I did an hour before on how to use this machine.
Yeah.
There's no instruction manual. So what does one do? One goes to Google.
Yeah.
And you Google, how do I change the bass on the TV? Because it's booming away very, very loudly, and I haven't got a clue how to do it. So it's spoiling, and it actually impacts upon our physical and mental health.
Yeah.
We're no longer in control or able to influence something that is a really important part of our life, a piece of technology that previously we've been very comfortable with.
Yeah.
So I think there's a great need for, if someone's introducing some kind of technology, not having the expectation that the person using it or the people using it are going to be able to embrace it and use it efficiently to start with, and then continue to use it efficiently and happily. There needs to be that follow-up as well.
Yeah.
That safety net to enable people to get the benefit of what you're trying to give them.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Keith. And Howard.
Don't assume that we can't learn new skills.
Yeah.
For example, Zoom. Somebody may not be able to use Zoom, but if you show them how to use Zoom, they may be able to use Zoom. Last year I had to learn how to use Confidence and do literature reviews. And one of the students made some videos to show us how to sign up for Confidence, how to use Confidence, and how to do the literature review. So that person made the literature review accessible because they took the time to make those videos. So don't assume that we can't learn things.
But the researchers who might be wanting to involve you might need to do a lot of extra work to make this a good experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's part of it. You've got to be prepared to do that.
Exactly. And Mac.
I think it also depends on what part of the journey a person is. Because all of us on here, I mean, my phone is my computer. I can use it. My Alexa is my companion. I use it a lot. My sat nav in the car, I don't know what I'd do without it. We adapt to things, I mean, years ago, I was the remote control in our house because I used to have to get up and press the button and change the channel. So we adapt, we change. But the thing to remember is that it might take us a little longer to understand some of the things. Be patient, and going back to what I said earlier, look and listen and look. Because we can do it, it just takes us that bit longer. That's all. And I think being patient with us and, eye contact is important when you're talking to a person, nodding of the head. Communication is a part of loads of things, it's sign language, it's gestures, and it's eye contact. All that is important. And if these things are stuck to by the researchers and the likes, I think we will achieve what we want to achieve.
Perfect. Thank you, Mac. And Julia?
Just a point on that. I agree with that. But in fact, we've seem to have lost the printed word. Anything that comes now comes with, you've got to connect in to find out how it works. And now most older people and people certainly with dementia and are not, even if they would need to read it again, even if they're shown once, they need to have it and to read it again. So it's a question of, well, it's a case of in many advanced things, for example, a radio that we bought, and there are no instructions as to how to tune it in. I can't do it. I had to wait till a young relation came, and I still don't know how to do it, but it's done. So it seems to be that it's throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So it's got to, whatever is invented, whatever the technology, it's got to be very clearly explained, and not just once. I think that you need it in writing, and then you can look it up in the book and puzzle that out. But something that you can't understand, it's not worth having.
Thank you, Julia. So I'm just going to bring us to a kind of final area for us to touch on. We've not got very long because I do want to leave a little bit of space for any questions. But you know, we've told people how to do it, you know, some good ideas around what works well and why. But there are complexities and challenges perhaps in involving people. Maybe people with dementia and carers together or separate, or maybe things around the way that researchers use, well, we've touched on this already, but the kind of acronyms and the academic language that might get used. Have you got any other examples of complexities and challenges to being involved and how they might be overcome, Dory?
I was going to say, don't be patronising either. You can find some people, they'll involve you, but they're quite patronising the way.
How does that come across, Dory?
Well, I was involved in, it was a reading thing, and I was sent some books to ask my group their thoughts on books for dementia. And some of my group are quite further along, but even they found them very childish and felt patronised by the books.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good example. Thanks, Dory. Any other complexities or challenges you might want to acknowledge? Julia?
I think, especially with we've said already that face-to-face meetings are good, but there are difficulties about it. I mean, there's transport, there's you're going to have to consider and have enough money to taxi people sometimes, people who can't who don't feel confident about finding their way, and it might be with a carer as well, because sometimes people need a carer with them, with people with dementia. So all those practical things have to be really thought of, including when you are on face to face. Make sure the spacing's right, and make sure it's not too echoey. Decide on the way where people are going to be sitting, make people feel comfortable, and that will work better for you and for them.
Perfect. Thanks, Julia. Alison?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Julia was saying there. You know, if you, to me, Zoom and Teams have been a godsend to me, because the fact I'm over in Northern Ireland, it means I can join so many more than I would be able to if it was face to face. But obviously over here we do have face to face with Dementia now, and something to think of is the venue, you know, that it is it because we were in somewhere recently and we had actually asked them to move, you know, it was really, really echoey. And it was just a temporary partition down the middle of the room, you know, so you were hearing all the noise from the meeting that was going on next door, which was very disorientating and really hard to focus on what was happening, you know. So I think to be aware of where the meeting is taking place, if it is face to face, and also the time of day, and is there parking around it? People are making their own way. Is there a bus service that will stop outside, close to the venue? So there's a lot of things to consider that if it's not right will mean it won't be a successful meeting, you know. And I know you can't accommodate everybody because some people will say, mornings work better for me, and other people will say, oh, definitely it has to be afternoon. And you cannot accommodate everybody. But just to be aware sort of the venue, and whoever's organising it, maybe going to check the venue out first, to make sure that it is suitable, that it is not too warm or it's not too cold. And, there's, if there's windows, that there's blinds. If it happens to be a sunny day in Northern Ireland, we don't really have that problem, but there's nothing worse than
Wales
sitting in
either.
a room if you're being blinded. Um, so there is a lot of things, I think, a tick box that any researcher has to have that they go through to make sure that they're meeting as many of the things as they possibly can.
Perfect. Thank you, Alison and Keith.
Yeah, picking Doy's point up about being patronising, I totally agree with what she said. However, I would say that people do need to be empathetic, understanding of the needs of someone with dementia and engaging with them. Because I'll give you an example of something that's occurred to me with research yesterday, only just yesterday. I received an email advising me about a meeting that was going to take place at 12 noon on the 24th of June. About 20 minutes later, I got another email saying the same meeting, same project was going to take place at 9 a.m. on that morning. There was no notification about whether one was right or wrong. So the same meeting was being scheduled for two different times, which completely threw me. And then it brings into my trust and my faith and confidence in the person who's sending those messages.
Yeah.
So, just all it needed was there's been a change of plan. The meeting at 12 o'clock is now cancelled. We're rescheduling for 9 o'clock. Hope that's okay, or something along those lines, just to advise people, because otherwise you're going to lose people's confidence and faith.
Yeah.
So, on a similar vein, clarity of expectation is really important as well with regards to technology-based projects, because I've been involved in projects with one or two companies where they've engaged with me at the prototype stage. So I've been involved in advising and testing and then influencing that design of that product as it's evolved. Other times, it's been a case of endorsing something that is already out there ready to market. And in the case of the latter, what they really want is to say this thing is fabulous. And they want the name of someone with dementia attached to their project to say how good it is so they can sell it. And I understand that. But it is a case of being open and honest and transparent with people in what your expectations are if you're doing a project relating to technology that might involve people in developing that product through. Where do you want them to sit in that production line?
Thanks, Keith. I'm just going to give the final word on this to Max. So we've got a little bit of time to answer people's questions. We've got a couple of good questions that have come up. So Mac.
I think they need to acknowledge us, appreciate us, accommodate us, compensate, and provide a safe space for us to open up. That trust, that rapport needs to be built, and then keep us in the picture.
Yeah.
I think, to me, these are the important things.
Thank you, Mac. So we've got some questions to answer from people, but before I do that, I'm just going to share a couple of slides with our audience because I don't want them to not know about this. So now it's the kind of bit where it all goes wrong, isn't it? Where I can't find anything and it doesn't look right, and I can't then get you back after. But let's give this a whirl. Can people see that? Can you see that, guys? Can you see
Yeah.
that? Yeah. Okay, so we wanted to let you know that this is a general webinar that you've attended today. But over the summer, there's an opportunity for up to 18 researchers, probably early career researchers, to have an online appointment with 2 to 3 people with dementia and or carers to discuss your ideas. So if you just wanted a bit more sit down time with people, you can have a go at getting one of those opportunities. And the way that that will happen is that we'll be inviting you to send a video of no more than 2 minutes introducing yourself and why you want and deserve this opportunity. We did this in Dementia Inquiries and it was brilliant. It was really good. So we'll make decisions. People with dementia and carers will make decisions who gets these opportunities. This will come round to you after the event today, but if you send the videos to the email that comes with the Bridges for Dementia Network at Sheffield, then we'll be able to make decisions about them by Friday, the 12th of June, and there'll be meetings over July. So we have about 18 opportunities there, and just wanted to alert you to that. You'll get a bit more information later today. Oops. Sorry, that must have been my final slide. Let me try that again because I've also got some references to share with you, which are things that we've talked about today. So do go and hunt them out. There's loads of resources, brilliant resources in the Dementia Inquirers website. There's the Deep Network, which you've heard today, lots of groups of people with dementia across the UK. You might find one in your local area that you could go and talk to. If you look at the Dementia Voices website, you'll find them there. There's a document produced by Innovations in Dementia about how to write accessibly for people with dementia. You've heard a little bit about that today, so some good ideas. And a paper by the Always Group, who you've heard mentioned, about PPIE and good involvement there. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to go back to the questions and just bring that to an end for the next 12 minutes or so. We'll finish in about 10 and just say thank you. I suspect you have in some ways answered some of these questions, but again, it's a bit of a free-for-all. So just answer in your own way. But there's some good questions we had submitted beforehand and a couple of good ones as well today. Do you prefer researchers who are friendly and chatty, or would you rather they're in and out quite quickly? I love that question. Dory.
Friendly and chatty.
Friendly and chatty. Yay. Alice.
Yeah, friendly and chatty, definitely.
And this is a really interesting question that perhaps we've not talked about in this way, but we've talked about what works well, but what are the kind of ways in which sometimes you feel a bit used and it's a bit tokenistic and you just had all of your knowledge extracted from you, which I think you've given the idea that that's not a good place to be. So what are the common things that researchers might do that end up making you feel that way, Mac?
I think if it's interactive, people talking and discussing, and it's where the conversation takes you. And that way you feel that you're involved, you're listened to, and of course your contribution is much needed.
Yeah.
And I think if we kept in the picture in that manner, we can succeed.
Thank you. Alison and then Howard.
Yeah, no, I think if somebody, as somebody had said, the question was if a researcher's in and out as quick as they possibly can, you haven't time to build up a relationship with the person. And I think it was Keith that said one of his checkpoints is that you trust the person. And that takes time. If you're meeting researchers sort of for the first time, you have to build up a bit of a relationship. And then I think they get more out of the session, and you definitely do too. So it works both ways that, because they build up a relationship with you as well. And everybody's more relaxed, and I think you're much more likely to give of yourself if you're in that sort of environment than if you feel a bit uncomfortable, as if, they don't really want to get to know me, they just want my input in their way.
Thanks, Alison. Howard and then Julia, and then I'll go on to the next question.
So I can't think of anything research to use an example of bad practice, but Keith and I used to be on the Three Nations steering group. And last year, the Alzheimer's Society produced the Long Goodbye video, which is everything bad about the depictions of people with dementia. And they asked the Three Nations steering group, should they show it? And they all said no. And the Alzheimer's Society just ignored them.
Yeah.
So,
what's the point?
They're involving people with dementia, but they're not.
Thank you for raising that, Howard. Julia.
I think I agree with what Alison said. And I just think no interrogation. If you ask somebody with dementia or a carer a load of questions, you might answer you might get answers, but they might not be the right ones because they haven't had time to think. It needs to be in the you need to guide the conversation to get those answers, and you'll get the real truth. And also by you talking, we're both everyone in the group is a human being. Researchers are human beings as well.
Thank you. So a question that's coming today, you've had lots of thanks in the chat box for your words of wisdom and your session that you've delivered today. But have you got any suggestions for how you do, especially around technology research, how you do straddle the line about introducing technology research, which might, I guess, be quite complicated? So how do you straddle the line between kind of being supportive without being infantilizing? It's a fine line, perhaps, isn't it? As people want to try and make things accessible to you. Keith. Oh, Keith, you're on mute.
Something I haven't mentioned previously, but which may be a good way into this answer, is to begin with icebreakers as well. Often really good project groups have a really good icebreaker to start with. So if the researcher has some kind of idea about technology, you might simply want to discuss technology generally with the people with dementia or the person with dementia. So you get to know their background as well, them as people. And part of that person picture will be about their confidence and their background in technology. It may be they've even been an engineer in their previous life.
Yeah.
They've been very technophobe who wants to become more confident with technology. So through an icebreaker, you can very quickly gain a lot of information that might not appear initially to be useful, but can be extremely useful as your project develops.
Thanks, Keith. Howard and then Dory.
I've worked with Jenny for a number of years before I joined the Bridges Network, and she's always made time to talk to people with dementia to find out how she can best engage with people with dementia. So we've used computers, we've used all sorts of strange musical instruments. And even one lady that's non-verbal was able to use those instruments because of the way that Jenny and her team explain how to use those instruments. So it's taking the time to explain things. We can learn about technology. People with dementia. I mean, I knew a lady that used Alexa. She had advanced dementia, but she could get up every morning and ask Alexa to play Cliff Richard because she was shown how to do that. So we can learn about technology, but you just have to take the time to explain it to us in a clear way that we can understand.
Time's really important there.
Yeah. When Bangor University asked, there's a few of us were called the Caban group. They asked us to be involved with research, but they put on like a meet and greet before we get into. They find somewhere that's accessible to everybody. They pay for our expenses to get there. We don't get paid, but we're given lunch, and we just talk across the table, cups of tea, and get to know each other and why they want to do this research, and then we have we go on from there, but we've broke the ice. We get to know each other first.
Yeah, thank you for all saying that. I think that breaking of the ice is really important.
Yeah.
I feel like we are coming to a close because we want to finish at midday and we've been here a long time this morning. Our audience is still with us, which is brilliant. So just as we come to an end, I want to say to the audience, thank you so much for being here with us. I've really enjoyed our conversation this morning, and I hope that you've got lots of ideas from it. I appreciate we may not have covered all of the questions that are in the chat box, and if there's anything that we really feel like we haven't covered, we'll try and send a response out in notes later. I don't know if you can all see the applause that's coming up on your
Yeah.
screen, everybody, which is really nice. So just to conclude, I will remind you that Neil, the project manager of Bridges, will be in touch later today with lots of links and other things in relation to the masterclasses and signing up for the Bridges newsletter, which I had meant to share and didn't. There'll also be a feedback form that will be sent out to you. So I think it's just for us really to give any final concluding comments, any words of advice. Dory.
Well, it's not advice really, but I would just like to applaud the audience
Yeah,
for
that's nice.
Yeah, I ditto that.
asking.
Thank you, Dory. Julia.
Well, I would like to say thank you for being here, and
Yeah.
we really need you. We need new research. We need so that we can use technology. So I'd like to know. We'd like to know how the projects get what they're about actually once they're there.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what they're about. So let's hope we can have some feedback that way.
Thank you. Any other words of advice or wisdom, Howard?
And we all want to know the results of the research as well, because often I do research and never hear a thing afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, if you want us to take part, keep us informed of what happens to the research in the end. You know, because not every piece of research is successful, but we like to know what the results are.
Certainly. Thanks, Howard. Alison.
Yeah, no, just thanks very much for the opportunity of coming along today. And I really do hope that some of you take up the offer of meeting with smaller groups of people, because that obviously worked well with the inquirers whenever they were doing it, so that has to be something that's worthwhile, to have a more in-depth talk, a specific talk with with a smaller group of people about your own research. And I think any of us on here would be more than willing to do that.
I hope so. That's what I'm relying
Yeah.
on.
Just to add as well, just to add my thanks to everyone for and some really good questions in this morning. So thank you for that. So often we don't get questions, and it's great to get them.
It is.
Just to thank really University of Sheffield, my old university, for
Yeah.
being involved in this. So as an ex-Sheffield University student, it's great to know that you're on board.
That's nice. I want to give the final word to Mac, actually. I want you to do your Columbo quote again. Do your Columbo quote for us. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Is it on? Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, I think the platform that you provided for us has been really, really good. And of course, we sincerely hope that whatever we said today has been fruitful for people that have been listening. I will just say that what you do today may seem insignificant to you, but it must mean and it must be important to somebody out there. I would like to finish on that.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who's been with me this morning on this screen. Keith, Howard, Alison, Dory, Julia, and Mag. I really appreciate you doing this, and I've really enjoyed being with you this morning. So thank you very much. I'm going to do that terrible thing in a moment, which is to just press end and everybody's going to disappear. Jenny?
I was just coming on to say, just to make it a bit more of a final flourish before we end, we talked about if people in the audience do want to turn on their cameras and say their thanks or give us a wave before we end the meeting for the panel, and that will express our thanks for what has been a truly wonderful session this morning.
Oh, look, these are our audience, everybody. Oh, that's lovely. I'd forgotten about that. Thank you, Jenny.